I thought he forgot. After all the weeks of silence, the missed calls, and the empty promises, I was sure my husband had moved on, or at least decided to leave me behind in his busy world. I kept telling myself that maybe he was too tired, too caught up in work, or maybe something else was going on. But deep down, the loneliness was crushing. Every night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the man I married still cared about me. Then, just when I thought I had accepted the cold distance between us, everything changed in one unforgettable night. It all started on a regular evening. I had just finished a long day of work and chores, expecting another night of silence, just like so many before. But then my phone buzzed. It was him. The message was simple. "I'm coming over." My heart raced. I didn't know what to expect. Was it a mistake? A prank? Or was this the moment I had been waiting for without even realizing it? I tried to prepare myself for disappointment, but something about that message gave me a flicker of hope. When he arrived, it wasn't the casual drop-by I had hoped for. He pulled me into an all-night conversation, the kind we hadn't had in months. Every word felt heavy with things unsaid, memories revisited, and emotions barely contained. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, heard, and wanted. But the night wasn't just about catching up, it was about uncovering the truth behind his distance. What had kept him away? What was he hiding? And more importantly, was there still a place for me in his world? As the hours passed, the night stretched into early morning, and every moment brought new surprises and raw confessions. I realized that sometimes, what seems like forgetting or giving up is only part of a much bigger story, one filled with pain, misunderstandings, and hope. But even as we talked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unresolved. Something was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to come out. I want to share this story with you because so many of us have felt that ache of distance in a relationship. The fear that maybe the one person who promised to be there forever has forgotten us. But sometimes, the truth isn't what we expect. Sometimes, love and pain come wrapped together, and the night can change everything, or nothing at all. What happened that night between us? Why did he stay all night when I thought he had already walked away? And what did it mean for our future? I'll tell you everything in the next part. But for now, just know this, even when it feels like you're forgotten, sometimes, the person you love is still fighting in ways you don't see. And sometimes, a single night can rewrite the whole story. Stay with me, because what comes next is something you won't want to miss. Before that night, I thought I knew everything about my husband. We had been together for years, shared dreams, plans, and countless moments that felt like they were building a future. But lately, something had changed. He became distant, quieter, and often disappeared for hours without a clear explanation. I tried to ignore the feeling creeping inside me, the fear that maybe he was slipping away. I asked him if something was wrong, but his answers were vague, and his eyes, once warm and open, seemed clouded with something I couldn't quite understand. The days leading up to that night were the hardest. I kept replaying our last conversations, searching for clues, wondering if I missed signs or if he was trying to tell me something without words. His sudden coldness wasn't like him, and it made me question everything, our love, our trust, and even myself. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? I felt trapped between hope and heartbreak. On the surface, he acted normal, coming home late, tired, but still present in the house. Yet the silence between us grew louder with each passing day. I caught him staring into space, distracted and restless, like his mind was somewhere far away. When I tried to talk, he would shut down or change the subject. I felt like I was losing him, but I didn't know how to reach him anymore. That's why when he said he wanted to talk that night, I was both scared and relieved. As the hours went by, he started opening up, but his words only deepened the mystery. He spoke about pressure, at work, family, and even himself. He mentioned things he hadn't shared before, things that weighed heavily on him. But even with all his honesty, I sensed there was more, something he was holding back, something that explained his silence and absence. I asked him directly if there was someone else, a reason why he pulled away, but he just shook his head and looked away. That answer wasn't enough. I could see the conflict in his eyes, like he was fighting an invisible battle, torn between what he wanted to say and what he feared would happen if he did. The tension in the room was thick, like a storm waiting to break, but neither of us wanted to be the first to let it fall. That night, I realized how little I truly knew about the man I married, and how fragile the bonds between us had become. There were pieces of his world I wasn't part of, shadows he kept hidden, and fears he didn't dare to face. As dawn approached, I knew this was only the beginning of a journey, one that would test our love, our patience, and maybe even our very future together. What was he really hiding? And how far was I willing to go to find out? The answers would change everything, but they weren't ready to come out just yet. As I sat beside him in the quiet of that early morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing from the story he was telling me. He spoke of pressure, of trying to be strong for everyone around him, but there was a distance in his voice, like he was reciting someone else's memories. I watched his hands tremble slightly as he held his coffee, and I knew this wasn't just about stress or tiredness. There was something deeper, something he hadn't found the courage to say yet. I remembered how he used to talk about his dreams. He wanted to start his own business, leave his demanding job, and spend more time with me. But those dreams slowly faded, replaced by long hours, unread messages, and cold silences. At first, I thought he was just focused. Now I wondered if he was trying to escape something. Or someone. What made it harder was how normal everything still looked on the outside. We had dinner together some nights. He smiled in photos. Our friends never noticed anything wrong. But behind closed doors, our conversations were short, our laughs rare, and the warmth we once had turned into quiet distance. I started to question if he was really coming home because he wanted to, or just because it was expected. That night, as he sat there trying to explain his silence, I saw flickers of guilt in his eyes. Not the kind that comes from lying outright, but the kind that builds up from hiding truths, little by little, until you're buried in them. I asked him again if something happened, something that changed everything. He hesitated. Then he looked me straight in the eye and said, "There are things I haven't told you. Not because I don't trust you, but because I'm afraid of what it might do to us." I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to press him, to demand answers, but part of me was scared too, scared that whatever he was keeping might hurt more than the silence ever did. And then there was another question forming in the back of my mind, one I didn't even want to say out loud. What if he was protecting me from something? There were too many pieces missing, too many shadows hiding between his words. I didn't know if I should keep waiting for the truth, or start searching for it myself. But I knew one thing, this wasn't just about a fading relationship. Something bigger was unfolding. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face what came next. I couldn't sleep after that night. His words kept echoing in my head. "There are things I haven't told you." That line kept playing over and over like a broken song. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the look on his face when he said it. He looked torn, like he wanted to protect me but also needed to tell me the truth. And that scared me more than anything. Because if it was something small, he wouldn't have looked at me like that. That wasn't the face of a man hiding a small mistake. That was the face of someone carrying something heavy, something that could break everything. In the following days, I watched him closely. He acted more present, more gentle, as if he was trying to make up for something. He'd hold my hand while watching TV, offer to cook dinner, even clean the living room without me asking. But there was something off in the way he moved, like he was forcing himself to stay calm. I noticed how often he checked his phone, how he'd glance at it with a flicker of panic before putting it down quickly. I wanted to ask, but part of me was afraid of the answer. What if there was someone else? What if he was just buying time before walking away? But then something strange happened. One night, when he was asleep, his phone lit up. A message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. I wasn't planning to look, I never crossed that line before, but my gut told me this wasn't just paranoia. The message said, You promised. We're still waiting. My heart dropped. Who were we? What did he promise? And why did it sound like a threat? I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, frozen, trying to make sense of the words. Was this the secret he was too afraid to tell me? My hands trembled as I placed the phone back beside him. I didn't want to believe it, but something deep inside me whispered that I had already known. I just didn't want it to be real. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I smiled, made coffee, asked about his day. But my mind was racing. I started going through our past months, trying to connect the dots. The long absences, the random errands, the sudden stress. It all started to look different in hindsight. I felt like a stranger in my own life, living beside someone I no longer recognized. Then, that evening, he told me he needed to go out, just for a while. Said he had to meet someone about a work thing. I nodded, but inside I was burning with questions. As soon as he left, I followed him. I had to know. I had to see for myself what he was hiding. He drove out of town, far from anywhere we usually go, weaving through dark, unfamiliar roads. I stayed far behind, heart pounding. Then he stopped, at a house I didn't recognize. The lights inside were on. He walked in without knocking. I parked a little farther down and waited. 10 minutes. 20. Still no sign of him. I was about to get out when I saw something move in the window. What I saw next changed everything I thought I knew. But I wasn't ready for the truth that waited behind that door. Not yet. I stayed in the car, staring at that window, my fingers clutched tightly around the steering wheel. My chest rose and fell with shallow breaths as shadows moved behind the curtain. I couldn't make out who was inside, but I knew he wasn't alone. I leaned forward, straining to hear or see something clearer. My heart was thudding so loud I could barely think. Then suddenly, the front door opened slightly, and a woman stepped out. She didn't look like what I expected. She wasn't dressed up, she didn't look like someone he was having an affair with. She looked tired, worried. She turned her head toward the road, and for a second, I thought she saw me. But she just stood there for a moment before going back inside. I wanted to believe maybe she was just a relative, maybe this house was connected to some project or side job. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about work. Not anymore. I could feel it in my gut. This had nothing to do with business meetings or secret affairs. This was something else. Something bigger. I waited for almost an hour before he came out again, this time with the woman walking beside him. They weren't arguing, but they weren't smiling either. Their conversation looked serious, tense, like they were trying to figure something out. And then, a child stepped outside. That's when the second twist hit me. A little boy, no more than 5, ran toward them and clung to my husband's leg. My husband didn't pull away. He knelt, ruffled the boy's hair, and hugged him back. It wasn't just a polite gesture. It was familiar, warm, natural. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I ducked lower in my seat, heart racing. Everything around me blurred, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Who was this boy? And why did my husband look at him like that? Like a father would? My mind spun with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Had he been living a double life? Was this why he pulled away? Was the weight he spoke of not about work, but about this secret family? If this was real, if what I saw was what I feared, then everything between us, every word, every night, every touch, was built on half-truths. I felt sick, confused, angry. But most of all, I felt betrayed. And yet, a part of me still wanted to believe there was some explanation. Something that would make this all make sense. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe the boy wasn't his. Maybe. But deep down I knew. This was the reason for the silence, the guilt, the distance. And whatever the truth was, it was buried in that house, in that moment, in that child's innocent arms wrapped around my husband's leg. I started the car, unsure whether to drive away or march to the door. Either way, nothing would be the same after this. I didn't drive away. Something in me, maybe it was anger, or maybe the need for truth, pushed me out of the car. My legs felt weak, but I walked straight to the house, every step fueled by questions that had haunted me for weeks. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know if I'd scream, cry, or collapse. All I knew was I couldn't walk away without hearing the truth from his mouth. As I reached the front steps, the door opened. He stood there, frozen, his face draining of color when he saw me. Behind him, the woman looked confused, and the little boy peeked from behind her legs, his eyes wide and curious. My husband stepped outside, gently closing the door behind him. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, my voice shaking. He looked at me, the weight of everything finally showing in his tired eyes. "I didn't know how." I stared at him, waiting. And then the truth came, slow, quiet, but heavy. The woman was his sister. The boy was his nephew. Their parents had died in an accident a year ago, and since then, he'd been secretly helping them. His sister had fallen into deep depression, and he had stepped in, taking care of them both, financially and emotionally. But he didn't want to bring it into our home. He thought I wouldn't understand. He thought it would break me. Or maybe he was afraid it would change the way I saw him. "I should have told you everything," he said. "But every time I tried, I felt like I'd be admitting I couldn't handle it all." I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. All this time, I had imagined betrayal. Another woman. A secret child. But it wasn't betrayal, it was pain. Pain he didn't know how to share. And still, I couldn't ignore the damage his silence had done to us. "I thought you stopped loving me," I said quietly. He stepped closer. "I never stopped. I just got lost trying to be everything for everyone." I didn't know if I should be angry or embrace him. But I understood now. The late nights, the distance, the silence, it all made sense. He hadn't forgotten me. He was just carrying a weight too heavy to hold alone. We stood there for a long time, the space between us finally filled with truth. I thought that was the end of it, the big reveal, the truth behind the silence. But just as I turned to leave with him, the woman called out. "Wait," she said, her voice hesitant. "There's something else." We both turned. The little boy clung to her hand, then looked at my husband and asked, "Are you going to tell her now?" My husband's face changed. His breath caught. Then he looked at me. "He's not just my nephew," he said slowly. "He's my son." The ground beneath me seemed to shift. And just like that, the truth I thought I had found shattered again. The moment he said it. "He's my son." Time slowed. I stood there, too stunned to speak, my thoughts crashing into each other, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. My mind wanted to reject it, to deny the words, but his eyes told me it was the truth. Not just guilt or fear in them now, but something deeper, sorrow. Regret. I turned to look at the boy, who was still clinging to the woman's hand, and for the first time, I noticed it. The way his smile tilted slightly like his father's, the same dark eyes, the same quiet expression. I felt the truth settle in my chest like a stone. He stepped forward, his voice trembling. "It happened before I met you. I didn't even know about him until after we got married. She, the boy's mother, passed away shortly after. My sister took him in. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid of how this would change everything between us. I wanted to tell you so many times, but every time I tried I froze. I didn't want to lose you. The weight of everything that had happened, the secrets, the silence, the distance, suddenly made sense. But even with all the answers, my heart still felt bruised. I had spent months doubting myself, thinking I was being pushed aside, unloved, forgotten. When all along, he was hiding a truth that could have brought us closer if only he had trusted me enough to share it. I stood there in silence for a long time, trying to gather all the broken pieces in my mind. Then I spoke softly but clearly. "You should have told me. From the beginning. Not just about the boy, but everything. I could have handled the truth." What hurt more was being shut out. He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. I know. And I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to ask for help. In that moment, I realized love wasn't just about the good days. It was about standing beside someone through the hardest parts, through mistakes, through grief, through secrets. But it only works when there's honesty. Without that, love has no air to breathe. I didn't walk away that night. Not because it was easy, but because I saw how much he wanted to make things right. And I saw the little boy, his son, standing there with innocent eyes, unaware of the storm happening around him. We talked, cried, and sat with the truth until it felt less like a wound and more like a scar that we would carry together. In the weeks that followed, I met the boy properly. Slowly, I began to understand my husband in ways I never had before. And he started opening up, finally learning how to let me in. No, things weren't perfect. But they were real now. And sometimes, that's where healing begins, not in pretending nothing broke, but in choosing to stay, to rebuild, and to believe in love again. In the end, I thought he forgot me. But the truth was, he was just lost, and trying to find his way back home.